right, let's see how this works. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. We will leave that. Hello to anyone joining the stream. We're just going to take 2 to 4 minutes to give people the chance to join besides my alt account. I'm Dan D, reads public domain. I'm not a professional reader, but I am interested in classic literature, and this is a way for me to experience it while possibly sharing it with others. So that's what this is all about. If you're tuning into the replay, probably skip 4 minutes ahead. We'll get to the read. Just making sure the audio's good, visuals are good. Visuals are way better than the first 3 chapters, so if you've missed that, prepare for an upgrade. I think I need a better green screen, but that's still better than just looking at a black screen, I'm sure. So all the professional readers will say the best thing for your voice before reading is to smoke. So that's what's happening here. All right, looks like I'm live here. Volume down to 0. Good. All right, things seem to be working. Oh, my hat disappears in the green screen, eh? Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. If you didn't read or weren't with me for chapters 1, 2, and 3, the first chapter is Robinson basically getting into an argument with his dad. His dad tells him the smart way to live is in the middle. Don't go too high. Well, if you're not a man of wealth or a man that's poor, there's no need to adventure. Just stay in the middle and be happy. And he disagreed, went to sea. His first night was the worst night ever, but it's his first night ever too. And then he had a night 6 weeks or 6 days later that made the first night seem like a joke. But by that point, his feet were dug in. So he went for another sail and made some money and decided this was the life for him. Then he got kidnapped by pirates in chapter 3 and lived as a slave for I don't know how long, maybe a couple of years. In any case, spent time as a slave to the pirates, and now we're in chapter 4 where it's right after he's orchestrated his escape. There's, I guess he's got the ship and stuff that he stole from the pirates, so he's going to liquidate that and get on with the next stage of his journey. So put this out. I think I'm just about ready to go. Let's see, we have a couple viewers here, so fantastic. If you're here and you can hear me, just put a little thumbs up or, sounds okay, sounds acceptable, whatever way you want to put it. Because if you can't hear me, there's no point in doing a live read, is there? I might move, let's see, slightly closer. Me. I'm projecting, I'm getting there, okay. You guys are being quiet like I'm reading in a classroom. Like you guys can talk. It's not going to interrupt the read one bit. I'm on top messages. That's a reminder. Go to all messages if you do want to see all the messages. Turns out top messages were all the messages. There are no messages. But you guys are here. You're here. You're listening. You're enjoying my little backdrop here. I've got a ship sailing the seas. Robinson Crusoe titling. Things have upgraded significantly since chapter 1. All right, well, we are just coming up on the 5-minute mark, so we'll say at about 12 seconds here, I'll start the read from A Plantation in Brazil. Thank you for joining me. If you can't hear me, definitely put that in the chat. But if you can, it's, louder, quieter, whatever the feedback is, I will try and respond. As he was charitable in his proposal, so he was just in the performance to a tittle. For he ordered the seamen that none should offer to touch anything I had. Then he took everything into his own possession, and gave me back an exact inventory of them, that I might have them, even so much as my earthen jars. As to my boat, it was a very good one, and that he saw and told me he would buy it of me for use of the ship, and then asked me what I would have for it. I told him he had been so generous to me in everything that I could not offer to make any price of the boat, but left it entirely to him. Upon which he told me he would give me a note of his hand to pay me 80 pieces of 8 for all of it at Brazil. And when it came there, if anyone offered to give more, he would make it up. He offered me also 60 pieces of 8 or 60 pieces of 8 more for my boy's jury, which I was loath to take. Not that I was not willing to let the captain have him, but I was very loath to sell the poor boy's liberty, who had assisted me so faithfully in procuring my own. However, when I let him know my reason, he owned it to be just, and offered me this medium, that he would give the boy an obligation to set him free in 10 years, if he turned Christian. Upon this, and jury saying he was willing to go with him, I let the captain have him. And we had a very good voyage to the Brazils, and arrived in All Saints Bay in about 22 days after. And now I was once more delivered from the most miserable of all conditions of life, and what to do next with myself, I was now to consider. The generous treatment the captain gave me I can never enough remember. He would take nothing of me for my passage, gave me 20 ducats for the leopard skin, and 40 for the lion skin, which I had in my boat, and caused everything I had in the ship to be punctually delivered to me. And what I was willing to sell he bought, such as the case of bottles, 2 of my guns, and a piece of the lump of beeswax, for I had made candles of the rest. In a word, I made about 220 pieces of 8 for all my cargo, and with this stock I went on shore in the Brazils. Thank you for joining Lurk. I had not been long here, but being recommended to the house of a good honest man like himself, who had an ingenio, as they call it, that is, a plantation and a sugar house. I lived with him some time, and acquainted myself by the means and the manner of their planting and making of sugar. And seeing how well the planters lived, and how they grew rich suddenly, I resolved, if I could get them to settle there, I would turn planter among them, resolving in the meantime to find some way to get my money, which I had left in London, remitted to me. To this purpose, getting a kind of letter of naturalization, I purchased as much land as was uncured as my money would reach, and formed a plan for my plantation and settlement, and such a one as one might be suitable to stock which I proposed to myself to receive from England. I had a neighbor, a Portuguese of Lisbon, but born of English parents, whose name was Wells. And in such circumstances as I was, I call him neighbor, because this plantation lay next to mine, and we went on very sociably together. My stock was but low, as well as his, and we rather planted for food than anything else for about 2 years. However, we began to increase, and our land began to come into order. So that 3rd year, we planted some tobacco, and made each of us a large piece of ground ready for planting canes in the year to come. But we both wanted help, and now I found more than before I had done wrong in parting with my boy's jury. But alas, for me to do wrong that never did right was no great wonder. I had no remedy but to go on. I was gotten into an employment quite remorse to my genius, and directly contrary to the life I delighted in, for which I forsook my father's home, and broke through all his good advice. Nay, I was coming to the very middle station, or upper degree of low life, which my father advised me to before, and which, if I had resolved to go on with, I might as well have stayed at home, and never fatigued myself in the world as I had done. And I used often to say to myself, I could have done this as well in England, among my friends, as gone 5,000 miles off to do it among strangers and savages, in a wilderness, and at such distance as never to hear from any part of the world that had least knowledge of me. In this manner, I used to look upon my condition with the utmost regret. I had nobody to converse with, but now and then this neighbor, no work to be done, but by the labor of my hands. And as I used to say, I lived just like a man cast away upon some desolate island that had nobody there but himself. But how just has it been? And how should all men reflect that when they compare their present conditions with others that are worse? Heaven may oblige them to make the exchange, to be convinced of their former felicity by their experience. I say, just how has it been that the truly solitary life I reflected on in an island of mere desolation should be my lot, and who had often unjustly compared it with the life that I had then led, in which, had I continued, I had in all probability been exceeding prosperous and rich. I was in some degree settled in my measures for carrying on the plantation, before my kind friend, the captain of the ship that took me up at sea, went back, for the ship remained there, providing his loading and preparing for his voyage, near 3 months. When telling him what little stock I had left behind me in London, he gave me this friendly and sincere advice. Señor Inglese, said he, for he had always called me, if you give me these letters and a procuration here informed to me, with orders to the person who has your money in London, to send your effects to Lisbon, to such persons I shall direct, and in such goods as are proper for this country, I will bring you the produce of them, God willing, at my return. But since human affairs are all subject to changes and disasters, I would have you give orders but for 100 pounds sterling, which you say is half your stock, and let the hazard be run for the first, so that if it comes safe, you may order the rest the same way, and if it miscarry, you have that other half to recourse it for your supply. This was so wholesome advice, and looked so friendly, that I could not be convinced that it was the best course I could take. I could not be but convinced it was the best course I could take. So I accordingly prepared letters to the gentlewoman with whom I'd left my money, and a procuration to the Portuguese captain as he desired. Take a little sip there because of the alliteration. The procuration of the Portuguese captain. And no, Lurk, if you're still here, I try not to eat chili immediately before reading. Well, beans are a very important part of a diet and will give you a complete protein. Let's just skip the procuration of the captain and move on to the next paragraph. Here we go. I wrote the English captain's widow a full account of all my adventures, my slavery, escape, and how I had met with the Portugal captain at sea, the humanity of his behavior, and what condition I was now in, with all other necessary directions for my supply. And when this honest captain came to Lisbon, he found means by some of the English merchants there to send me over. Not the order only, but a full amount of my story. To a merchant in London, who represented it effectually to her, whereupon she not only delivered the money, but out of her own pocket sent the Portugal captain a very handsome present for his humanity and charity to me. The merchant in London, vesting this £100 in English goods, such as the captain had written for, sent them directly to him in Lisbon, and he brought them all safe to me in the Brazils, among which, without my directions, for I was too young in my business without my tried to look at the camera and be clever, but I couldn't remember the line. For I was too young in my business to think of them. He had taken care to have all sorts of tools, ironwork, and utensils necessary for my plantation, and which were of great use to me. When this cargo arrived, I thought my fortune made, for I was surprised with joy of it, and my good steward, the captain, had laid out £5, which my friend had sent him for a present for himself, to purchase and bring me over as servant, under bond for 6 years' service, and would not accept any consideration, except a little tobacco, which I would have him accept, being of my own produce. Neither was this all, but my goods being all English manufactures, such as cloth, stuffs, dyes, and things particularly valuable and desirable in the country, I found means to sell them to very great advantage, so that I may say that I had more than 4 times the value of my first cargo, and now infinitely beyond my poor neighbor. I mean, in the advancement of my plantation, for the first thing I did, I bought me a Negro slave and a European servant also. I mean another besides that which the captain brought me from Lisbon. But as abused prosperity is oftentimes made very means of our greatest adversity, so it was with me. I went on my next year with great success in the plantation. I raised 50 great rolls of tobacco on my own ground, more than I had disposed of for the necessities of my neighbors, and these 50 rolls, each being above 100 weight, were well cured and laid by against the return of the fleet from Lisbon. And now, increasing in business and in wealth, my head began to be full of projects and undertakings beyond my reach, such as are indeed often the ruin of the best heads in business. Had I continued in the station I was now in, I had room for all the happy things to yet had befallen me, for which my father had earnestly recommended a quiet, retired life, and of which he was so sensibly described for the middle station of life to be full. But other things attended me, and I was still to be the willful agent of my own. I was still to be the willful agent of my own miseries, and particularly to increase my fault, to double the reflections upon myself, which in my future sorrows I should have leisure to make. All these miscarriages were procured by an apparent obstinate adhering to my foolish inclination of wandering abroad, and pursuing that inclination in contradiction to the clearest views of doing myself a fair and plain pursuit of those prospects and those measures of life which nature and providence concurred to present me with and to make my duty. Excuse me. As I had done thus in breaking away from my parents, so I could not be content now, but I must go and leave the happy view I had of being a rich and thriving man in my new plantation, only to pursue a rash and immoderate desire for rising faster than the nature of the thing admitted. And thus I have cast myself down again into the deepest gulf of human misery that a man ever fell into, or perhaps could be consistent with life and a state of health in the world. So that's the end of chapter 4, relatively short one. The next chapter is Shipwreck, chapter 5. Just stay online for up to, what are we at? We're at 20 minutes here. Maybe we'll stay on for 2 or 3 more minutes to see if anybody wants chapter 5. Let me skip ahead and see how long chapter 5 is. It's 11 pages. We just did 6. Might just save chapter 5. Might just save it. If anyone has joined me, I appreciate it. This was my first reading with the backdrop. I'll probably have to get a different color hat. I just want to see without the green screen. That's the setup. Maybe that would have been better the whole time. But now I'll have a video to look at to see, because the hat kept dropping out. Anyway, so got the background. We're up to chapter 4. We might go into chapter 5, but if we do, I definitely need to relax. Only question that was asked during chat, Lurk wanted to know if I've ever farted doing a reading. The answer to that is no, but I've only done a few readings, so tune in next week. Anything can happen. If you just wandered in here from the vertical live scroll, I appreciate you taking a few seconds to view. The reading, I think, is done. This channel is just doing reads of public domain material. I'll do everything from old books, old poems, court documents. If they're shorter, I'll do them as shorts, but the long ones I'm just going to do once a week as a full reading here. Yeah, maybe this is, maybe I need a better green screen, so we'll just go with that because the reading's over. And yeah, maybe we'll just end the stream here too. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being on the replay. If you're on the replay, I hope that hope you're enjoying the read so far, and that this is helping you get some sleep or getting you into listening to more. See you next week.